Kurosun is back with another banger of a pad, and now instead of speed, they are showing us their take on a more control-oriented surface with the soon-to-be released Samurai. First of all, the pad looks amazing. The picture of a samurai and the white stitching go so well together, and the logo on the bottom corner complements the design very well. The samurai is sized 490x420, and with their alpha cell base, the pad measures only 3mm thick. The stitching is very consistent white stitching that is ever so slightly below the surface level, so you can't feel it in use at all. The base is pretty firm like on the Ninja pad, and it sticks really well to my desk. It's not that kind of alpha cell base that gathers all the gunk and hairs, and is rather easy to maintain. The firmness is pretty much on the medium side of things, and you can press to it, but the rebound is pretty quick, and for example I've had zero issues with dot skates on this pad. Overall, the build quality and craftsmanship is very impressive with this pad, like with the Ninja pad. The Samurai is meant to be a really balanced cloth pad with a surface that has never been seen before on a mousepad. Usually the fabrics you see on mousepads are knitted, but on this one it is actually woven. This creates an interesting type of pattern to the surface, and it almost looks like there are like multiple layers of fabric on it. This is by far one of the most comfortable fabrics on a mousepad that I've run my hand across. It is very smooth to the touch and has a slightly woolly feeling to it. On the Y-axis you can slightly feel the small texture on it, but it is no means abrasive. The sleeves that I've tried on it, so the pulsar sleeve and the 4114 sleeve seem to work also pretty well with it. The pulsar sleeve has a slightly more friction overall on both X and Y axis, and the other one feels very quick on both. Diagonally, these sleeves have a lot of tug on the surface, but I've not noticed it to harm my performance at all during my time of testing this pad. Speed-wise, the pad is like advertised, balanced. For me, the most similar pads in terms of friction properties is the Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn or the Wallhack SY001, but the surface and base combo makes this a pretty different feeling pad to actually use. It is overall a very consistent experience as the base has so little give, and it has honestly become one of my go-to pads when I want a bit more control than the speed pads that I usually go for. There is a slight break-in period of around a week of constant usage to even out the X and Y axis static friction wise, and straight out of the box you can feel some difference between those. The dynamic friction, however, is very consistent between the X and Y from the get-go. I did some rough measurements along with some other pads that I thought would make a good comparison for both the static and dynamic friction, but my playtime was not quite enough at the time of testing to even out the static axis differences completely. These tests, however, pretty much validate my experiences with this pad. The tests show pretty clearly that the static friction values were pretty much in line with, for example, the wallhack pads, even without a complete breaking, and it is expected that the pad will even out even more after more time with this. The dynamic friction is then very consistent between those axes and is somewhat similar to that of the Saturn or the SY110, but yeah, more consistent overall. The main thing I like about this pad is how balanced the static and dynamic friction actually is. There is a small tug when getting the mouse to move and while changing directions, but the transition to dynamic friction is just very smooth and there are no sudden speed jumps or anything. The main thing I've enjoyed using this pad in is some precise tracking scenarios and other stuff that require me to stay on target for extended periods of time. It just gives me a very locked in feeling overall without being a mud pad. I've tested a lot of different skates on this pad during these past weeks, and so far my favorites have been the Ghost Glide Cyclone dots, the Esports Tiger Yanzi dots, and also the tried and true core pads on my Viper V3 Pro. The only skates that felt a tiny bit jarring were the stock skates on, for example, my Maximize, since the edges are a bit more sharp than on aftermarket skates. So in general, I would say that the more edge rounding your skates have, the smoother the overall experience will be with this pad. But this also pretty much applies to most of the cloth pads out there as well. So yeah, overall I think the Kurosun Samurai is a very safe recommendation for most users with many games in mind, and While I said that I mainly use it for aim training, I've also had great success in Apex with it. It is not a bad pad, it is not a speed pad, but it is pretty much straight in the middle, like it says on the pad. It is a balanced pad. The launch of this pad will happen on June 19th, and the pad will cost $49, which I think is reasonable considering the overall quality and the performance this pad can offer. It is a really good offering from Kurosun. But yeah, that is about it. Thanks for watching and see you on the next one. Goodbye.